That chap there.
Once upon a time, I couldn't be bothered to rewrite the boring bit that you all already know. Cinderella was busy cleaning the pots and pans after her step-family had left the ball. She'd given up being annoyed at her mistreatment after she had started writing her life story. They were so stuffed after that dynamite was published. She was, however, quite irritated about not going to the ball. She remembered what parties were like when her father used to throw them when she was a girl, and was rather fond of dancing. All of a sudden, a mysterious woman appeared. "Who the heck are you?" Cinderella shouted, quickly glancing around herself. She picked up her father's old shotgun. "Move an inch and I'll shoot," she cried. The mysterious woman then said, "I am your fairy godmother." "I'm sure you are, dear," said Cinderella, lowering the gun. She racked her brains for the best way to get this potty, but likely harmless, old woman safely back to the local asylum. "I can see that you don't believe me," said the fairy godmother, "but I assure you it's true." Then, with a flourish, she instantly made the pans cleaner than clean. "Did you work for the circus?" Cinderella asked. "What do you mean?" said the fairy godmother, glancing into the nearest mirror. "I'm sure I plucked my chin hairs this morning." "I mean the magic," sighed Cinderella. She could see that it was going to be a long night. "You were wishing that you could go to the ball," said the fairy godmother. "Well, thinking about it," Cinderella said. "Those are one and the same thing," came the reply. "My goodness, you should have a degree in psychology or something," Cinderella smirked sarcastically. "Anyway, they're not necessarily the same thing, since one may think, for example, about eating sprouts." "But you shall go to the ball," said her fairy godmother, "and you shall be free from cooking and cleaning and scrubbing and washing." "Someone's got to do it," said Cinderella, "unless you're referring to my birth into a rich family, in which case you're just advocating class discrimination. I got the impression from the nonsense my father used to read to me that fairy godmothers were quite left-wing in their political leanings, but I suppose there's room for variation in your profession." "What gets me is the fact that I do all of the work," she continued. "If you could just magically get them off their lazy backsides to share the work between the four of us, I'd be happy." "Oh," said the fairy godmother. "Well, you'll marry the prince." "And why would I want to do that?" said Cinderella. "Even if the prince is reasonably attractive, and I even cared, that only necessarily puts him in the 75th percentile. He might be annoying anyway. And as for his position as the expected puppet ruler of a sovereign state, small enough to allow the entire adult female population to dance in one building, I really don't get all the fuss. Just because I fancy a party doesn't mean I want to be part of a useless archaic monarchy." "You must be careful, my dear," said the fairy godmother, "before you sound pro-revolutionary." "Politics aside," Cinderella pointed out, "I wouldn't mind a bit of a dance." "I can make you a dress," exclaimed a newfound acquaintance. "People can do that without magic," said Cinderella. "But it will be the most beautiful dress you've ever seen." "I know some people are proud of their fashion design," Cinderella said, "but that's just plain arrogant." "Let the dress speak for itself," said the fairy godmother. "It's beautiful," Cinderella cried as the dress appeared on herself. "But this corset is a freaking health hazard." "You look more beautiful for the prince," the old lady explained. "If the prince cares that much, I don't really want to meet him," said Cinderella. "Very well, dear," said the fairy godmother. "Here you are." "That's better," Cinderella sighed, now that she could breathe out. Then she felt the shoes. "What?" cried Cinderella, looking her fairy godmother in the eye. "You're as potty as I thought you were. These things are made of glass. I don't think about what might happen if I broke one. I'd damage my feet if they didn't break anyway, considering how hard they are." "All right," came the reply. The Cinderella was magically endowed with a pair of decent dancing shoes. "Now," said the fairy godmother, "I shall need a pumpkin." "I suppose," Cinderella replied, "that after being given a dress for free, the least I could do is help fill your pantry. If you happen to make a pie, you wouldn't mind bringing me a slice of it too, would you? I happen to be rather fond of pumpkin." "It's not to eat," explained the fairy godmother. "Don't tell me," Cinderella said dryly. "Knowing you'll cut eye holes out and stick it over my head as a ball mask." "No," said the fairy godmother. "It's for the carriage." At this point, Cinderella lost it completely. She laughed so hard that she stamped her feet and already had a good reason for having asked for non-glass footwear. "You mean to tell me," she chortled, "that you can make yourself appear as if from nowhere, materialise both the dress and shoes, and you can't just make me appear at the ball, or at least make a carriage by yourself, but you can fabricate one from a cucurbita? That's utter nonsense." It's how the spell works, was the explanation. With that, one of the pumpkins in the garden transformed into a carriage. Some of the mice that Cinderella had failed to catch became horses, and a dignified newt became a footman, while an old toad transformed into a driver for the carriage. Cinderella was guided by the footman, into the carriage. "I hope those two get to stay as humans," Cinderella said, looking at the footman and driver, "since removing a person's self-awareness is tantamount to murder." "Oh," said the fairy godmother, "I hadn't thought of that. I suppose I'll have to pretend to be immigrants or something." Cinderella went on her way to the castle. She heard a faint, "Be back home from midnight," from the direction of her house. When she was at the castle, she was, of course, asked for her name. "Cinderella Schneider," she replied. "What an unusual name," said the gatekeeper. "I know," she grinned, "but my stepsister kept calling me as a taunt, and I decided to embrace it and had my name changed legally from Hilda to Cinderella, to shut them up." "Would that be the Kruger family?" asked the gatekeeper. "I used to know your father. Old Schneidy Remarks, we called him. Couldn't believe it when he married Jan Kruger's old widow." "Yep," she said, "that's them." When she got into the ball, everyone turned around and gasped at how beautiful she looked. Her stepmother and stepsisters couldn't recognise her because they were short-sighted. "What's up?" she asked the nearest woman. "Is everyone crazy around here?" "Nothing's up, love," said the woman. "You've just got a nice dress." "I have a nice dress?" Cinderella asked. "That's what I said," was all she could get as an answer. Cinderella understood why they were all so amazed at her clothing. They were all completely plastered. The prince saw two similar-looking, beautiful women walk towards him. As he squinted to look at them more closely, he realised that there was, in fact, one woman. "Hello," said Cinderella. "How are you?" The prince then uttered a noise that sounded somewhat like a pop song being played in reverse at twice normal speed. The combination of having had a drop of champagne and the presence of Cinderella made him virtually incapable of speech. She was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. The woman he had thought less about last week was nowhere near as good-looking, and besides, this was different. However, he pulled himself together and killed a few seconds by pulling his jacket down and gently coughing. "Hello, my dear," he enunciated in his best official voice. "Welcome to our gathering, ha ha ha." "It is an honour to meet you, your highness," said Cinderella with a hint of sarcasm. It was just slight enough a hint as to be unnoticed by the average boozer, and the prince was no average boozer. "And who do I have the honour of meeting tonight?" the prince asked. "Rather a lot of people, I should imagine," retorted his newfound love. "Ah, but of course I mean you, my love," said the prince. "I'm kinda anonymous," she explained courteously. "Oh dear," said the king, who was sat next to the prince. "That sounds a bit dodgy." "Shall we dance anyways?" asked the prince. Cinderella agreed to dance. She found him to be surprisingly good at dancing, especially considering that he was under the influence. They danced and danced because the prince didn't want to let go, and Cinderella saw that the other men dancing looked like cows trying to bludgeon a turkey with their hooves. Then, before she knew it, the clock struck. "Bong, bong, 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 bong," it went politely. "Bong, bong, 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 bong." "I must be going," said Cinderella. "It's 11 o'clock now." She wasn't taking any risks with that crazy old lady. "But the party has barely started," the prince pointed out. Cinderella made an excuse and went to her carriage. One of her dancing shoes came off, which she left behind since it was going to disappear later anyway. Or so she thought. She went home, and just as she had predicted, everything disappeared at midnight. The dancing shoe she still had on did not disappear for some reason, though. Cinderella thought nothing of it for the next couple of days. Then she heard an announcement read out in the town. "By royal order, His Majesty the Prince declares that anyone whomsoever shall fit this tiny slipper shall be made his wife, the princess of our land." Cinderella went home crying. She knew that she was one of the few people in the land to suffer from pedal atrophy. Her fairy godmother then appeared. "Why are you crying, my dear?" she asked. "I left the ball at 11, with no trace of who I was," Cinderella started. "Oh dear," cried her fairy godmother. "That's not what I'm crying about," snapped Cinderella. "I left a shoe behind, and now this crazy prince bloke, who probably has a weird obsession with feet, wants to marry me. And he can find me just because I have small feet." All of a sudden she had a bright idea. "Can you use your magic to do something useful for a change?" she asked. "But dear, I helped you to get to the ball, which you wanted to go to," her fairy godmother said. "This is no time for pedantism," Cinderella said firmly. I have an idea. The prince was so sloshed at the ball that he wouldn't recognise me now, so if you make one of my stepsisters fit small, he'd marry her instead, she continued. But that wasn't what I had planned out for you, said her fairy godmother. I thought you were supposed to help me not carry out your own personal agenda, said Cinderella. Sometimes I don't know whether you're a fairy godmother or a psychotic, manipulative trickster. Whatever you wish, my dear, said the fairy godmother. Well, that she disappeared, never to be seen again by Cinderella. Meanwhile, in a nearby marketplace, a loud splat was heard. A few sparking dust particles flew across the ground and Anastasia's feet had magically shrunk. She then proceeded to fall majestically into a large tub of molasses. After getting home and having a 2-hour-long bath, there was a knock at the door. It was the Duke with his page, their horses, and a relatively small shoe. Anastasia tried it on and it fitted perfectly. She and the prince were married and lived reasonably passable royal lives for the rest of their natural lifespan. They had plenty of children anyway, which is the main reason behind the whole thing. It was during the reign of their eldest son that a revolution occurred. The Prussian authorities were quick to take advantage of the unrest, and the country became part of the Kingdom of Prussia, in an area that is now in Germany. After these events, Cinderella, now an old woman, smiled contentedly to herself. She knew that the whole royalty thing had been a ridiculous waste of time. The end.